They showed up at 7:06 in the morning. I had just poured my oatmeal into the bowl, the steam still curling upward like it had done every morning since Jonathan passed. My knees were already aching. Some days it was the back, other days the shoulder, but I had my rhythm. Oatmeal, local news on low volume, silence, that was my rhythm. Then I heard the tires. I shuffled to the window and pulled back the curtain. It was Ethan, my son. His silver SUV was in the driveway, and he wasn't alone. His wife Tessa stepped out first, already pulling at the car seat latch. Then Jackson and Chloe emerged, my grandkids half asleep, both glued to their phones. 6 suitcases were being unloaded. My gut tightened. Ethan looked up toward the house, gave a half smile, and started up the porch steps. I opened the door, still in my robe. Ethan, I said, is something wrong? He grinned like everything was fine. Hey, Mom, thought we'd surprise you. Surprise me? With what luggage, we're just staying a little while, just while the house is being renovated. Remember, I told you about it. He hadn't. Last time we talked, it was about my arthritis flaring up. No mention of renovations. No request to visit. Certainly no heads up about an entire family moving in. Tessa brushed past me with her arms full of expensive-looking bags and said, "The house is freezing. Does the heater even work?" I didn't respond. I just stood there watching my front door open and close without me inviting anyone. Jackson mumbled, "Hey, Grandma," without looking up. Chloe at least tried to smile, but she was already scrolling her screen. Inside, they brought noise, footsteps, and smells I hadn't gotten used to in 5 years of quiet. 15 minutes later, Tessa was tossing out the food I'd just bought 2 days ago. "This cheese is expired," she announced, "and these sausages obscene. You're going to give yourself a heart attack." "I've been eating those since the '80s, I said, half smiling, still breathing. She didn't laugh. Then came the moment that made my hands shake. "We'll take the master bedroom upstairs," Ethan said, like he was announcing the weather. "You'll be more comfortable downstairs near the kitchen. Fewer stairs. That room was sacred. Jonathan and I had slept in it for 45 years. His book still sat on the nightstand. His watch, still broken, lay in the drawer. I didn't even touch that drawer unless I had to. "I take the stairs every day," I replied firmly. "They're good for the joints." Mom Tessa interjected, "You're 76. What if you fall? I've never fallen. And I have a bathroom upstairs." There's a first time for everything she said, already marching toward the staircase like the decision had been made. Ethan gave me that look, the one I'd seen over the past few years. That strange blend of pity and irritation, like I was a child who kept insisting she was an adult. "It's just temporary," he said, as if that excused everything. I didn't fight, not that day. I went upstairs and packed my things in silence, not because I agreed, but because I needed time. I needed to observe. Something in my bones told me they weren't just visiting. They were moving in. By sundown, my house didn't feel like mine. Tessa had replaced the paintings, moved Jonathan's photo from the mantel, and brought her own little ceramic statues of birds and Buddha heads. The living room echoed with video game sounds. The kitchen smelled like lavender-scented garbage bags, and I, Margot Ellison, mother, grandmother, and homeowner, was being reduced to a guest in my own home. But I wasn't going to let it stay that way, not for long. It started the next morning. I came into the kitchen at 6:45, still wearing my slippers and expecting my usual routine coffee eggs toast. What I found instead was Tessa already up, wearing Lululemon leggings and chopping kale like she owned the place. "Morning," she said without looking up. "Breakfast at 8 now. We're trying a family schedule structure helps the kids." I blinked. "I've been eating breakfast at 7 for 40 years. "Well," she smiled thinly, "maybe it's time for a fresh start." Fresh start. In my own damn house, I went to the coffee pot and reached for the canister only to find it gone. In its place, herbal tea. Chamomile, peppermint. Some green thing I couldn't pronounce. "Where's the coffee?" Tessa glanced up. "Oh, I put that away. Caffeine isn't good at your age. I read it increases the risk of heart palpitations. I've had 2 cups a day since Reagan was president. I'll take my chances." She shrugged like I was being unreasonable and went back to slicing fruit. Later that morning, I walked into the living room to find my old vinyl records, the ones Jonathan and I collected over decades gone, my entire music shelf empty. In their place, floating shelves with fake succulents and some minimalist print that read, "Gratitude is a lifestyle." I found the records stacked in a cardboard box by the garage door like garbage waiting for pickup. "They're dusty," Tessa explained. "Chloe's allergic. Besides, no one listens to records anymore." "I do." "Well, if you want music, Jackson can show you how to use Spotify." I didn't answer. I just picked up the box and took it to my room downstairs, the room they shoved me into for my own safety. It had no character, no warmth, a bed too low, a closet too small, and one window facing a fence. Still, I lined the box beneath the bed, my private museum of memories out of sight but not surrendered. The worst came 2 days later. I walked by the hallway closet and saw that it had been cleared out. The photo albums, my entire life in print were gone. I panicked. I ran to the back door and found them stuffed inside the outdoor trash bin, wedged between takeout containers and a bottle of vegan salad dressing. I pulled them out, shaken. Tessa was folding laundry in the sunroom when I stormed in. "You threw away my photo albums." She didn't even flinch. "We needed storage space. Besides, they were old. You can scan them. Everything's digital now. These are pictures of my parents, my wedding, Ethan's first steps. You don't throw away people's lives just because they're old." Ethan walked in mid-argument, holding his laptop like a shield. "Mom, we're just trying to declutter." "It's not personal." "It feels personal," I said, quietly holding the soggy albums in my arms like a wounded animal. Ethan sighed. "It's a big house, too much for you to manage on your own." "We're helping." "No, you're not," I said, and my voice didn't tremble. "You're replacing me one box at a time." That night, I sat in my small bed and flipped through a damp photo of Jonathan and me on the porch, back when we first bought this house. The sun was setting behind us in the picture. I remembered that evening clearly. We talked about growing old here, sitting side by side in those rocking chairs. He kept his word. I was the one being pushed out. But I wasn't going to be quiet about it anymore. They thought I was some fragile old woman clinging to routines and yellow wallpaper, but I still had something they didn't expect: ownership, and I planned to use it. It was a rainy Tuesday when Chloe knocked on my door, light tapping, hesitant, not the usual careless entrance like the others. I looked up from Jonathan's letters, some I still hadn't opened since he passed, and called out, "Come in." The door creaked open, and there she stood, hoodie half-zipped, eyes darting behind her like she didn't want to be seen. "Hey, Grandma," she said softly. "Chloe." I nodded, surprised. "You need something?" She stepped in and closed the door behind her, her fingers twitching at the hem of her sleeve. Her eyes scanned my little room, her first time seeing it since the invasion. "Wow," she whispered. "So this is where you sleep now." I didn't answer. I let her take it in the boxes under the bed, the record stacked in one corner, the framed photo of Jonathan on the windowsill. Then she said it. "I came to warn you." I sat up straighter. "About what?" Chloe looked down, voice barely above a whisper. "I overheard Mom and Dad last night. They were talking in the kitchen. They think it's time you moved out permanently." The word hit like a dull knife. "Moved out to a care facility, someplace called Willow Haven. Mom said it's already been reserved. A deposit's been paid." I felt the floor shift under me. "They want to bring Grandma Marjorie and Grandpa Franklin here. They're selling their house in Bristol Shore. And this one's more convenient. And what about me?" Chloe looked away. "They think you'd be better off somewhere with professional care." "Professional care," I repeated, "because I cook my own meals, because I take my own walks, because I don't pretend Kale is a personality." She half smiled guilty. "They say it's for your safety, that you can't manage alone." "I was managing just fine," I snapped, "until they barged in." "I know," her voice cracked. "That's why I'm telling you now. They plan to talk to you tonight, with everyone present, like some sort of intervention." I exhaled slowly. My heart was pounding, but my voice stayed calm. "Thank you, Chloe." She nodded, still fidgeting. I didn't know what else to do. I stood and walked over to her. For a moment, I just looked at her, my granddaughter, the only person in this house who still seemed to see me. Then I hugged her firm and long. What are you going to do? She asked, muffled into my shoulder. I'm not sure yet, I said, but I'm done waiting for them to define my future. That evening, the air in the living room was thick before a word was spoken. Ethan had his laptop in front of him, like he was moderating a conference. Tessa sat cross-legged on the couch, already annoyed. Chloe and Jackson were perched on the stairs, pretending to be invisible. I stood near the my fireplace, and waited for them to begin. Mom, Ethan said, clearing his throat. We want to talk to you about what's best moving forward. For you, Tessa added, too sweet. You mean the home, I said. Ethan blinked. It's not a home, Mom. It's a care center. Willow Haven. Top-rated. For people who've lost their minds. Have I silence. Tessa spoke next. It's about comfort, safety. You shouldn't have to worry about managing a house this size. This house, I said, slowly belongs to me. Still does, if I recall. Ethan nodded, of course. But we were thinking long-term. If we have to go through the courts to get guardianship, that's when I lost it. You'd try to take legal control of my life, only if you won't listen. I laughed sharp and bitter. Then listen to this, I'm not going anywhere. You might be used to erasing me quietly. But not this time. Ethan looked stunned. Tessa's mouth opened, then closed. Chloe looked straight at me, and for the first time I saw something in her eyes. That wasn't pity. It was pride. The next morning I called Walter Briggs. I hadn't spoken to him in over a decade, not since Jonathan's funeral. But the moment I heard his gravelly voice on the other end of the line, I felt the ground beneath me steady just a little. Margot, he said, almost disbelieving. Well, I'll be damned. How long's it been? Too long, I said. I need a favor, Walt. He didn't hesitate. Say the word. By 2 p.m., we were sitting on the porch of his modest little house outside Ashford Hills. The same green rocking chairs he'd always had, same view of the creek in the back. It smelled like old wood and black coffee. Familiar, safe. I told him everything about Ethan and Tessa, about how they'd moved in under the guise of helping, how they'd taken over my bedroom, my kitchen, my life, about the albums in the trash, the care home they'd picked out behind my back, about how I'd stopped being their mother and become a roadblock. Walter listened without interruption. When I finally stopped, he leaned back in his chair and let out a slow breath. They're pushing you out of your own damn house, he said. They're doing it with smiles, I muttered. But make no mistake, it's an eviction dressed in family concern. Walter nodded thoughtfully. Do you still hold the deed I do? They never transferred it. Ethan said he'd handle the paperwork later to avoid gift tax. That was 2 years ago. A slow grin crept across Walter's face. Then you've got them right where you want them. He went inside and came back a few minutes later with a card. Caleb Briggs, real estate and probate law, his nephew. He's a shark, Walter said proudly. Young, smart, and doesn't blink. I called Caleb that afternoon. We met the next morning in a quiet booth at a diner off the highway. He was younger than I expected, maybe mid-40s, but he had the kind of sharp confidence I recognized from my days in government service. After I laid out my situation, he leaned in, fingers steepled. Legally, the house is yours, he said. If there's no trust, no life estate, no transfer of title, you have full rights to sell it, rent it, burn it to the ground if you want. I raised an eyebrow. Let's not go full scorched earth. He smiled, just making a point. And if they try to challenge me, claim I'm not competent. Caleb nodded. They'd have to get medical testimony. That takes time. You're coherent, organized, clearly informed. If we move fast, they won't have a leg to stand on. A pulse I hadn't felt in years stirred in my chest. Hope. And if I want to sell the house, I asked, but still live on the property. Is that even possible? Caleb grinned. That's creative. It's unusual, but not impossible. We can write it into the contract. Life tenancy in a guest house or annex. I know a few clients looking for property in Clearwater Bay. People with money who want water views and are willing to make unusual deals to get them. I stared into my coffee cup. Everything in me wanted to scream yes, but there was a hesitation, a quiet fear, not of them, but of change. You sure about this? I asked him. Are you? He countered. And just like that, I realized I was. They had already stolen enough from me. I wasn't going to let them take my dignity, too. I want to move forward, I said. He pulled out a notepad. Then let's make this official. The listing went live 4 days later. No address, just photos. A classic colonial on a large bayfront lot in Clearwater Bay. Caleb took the shots himself during one of Ethan and Tessa's day trips to Bristol Shore. I didn't ask where they went. I was just glad they weren't home. The house looked strange in the photos, unfamiliar, too polished, too staged, like it had already forgotten who it belonged to. But I knew the bones. I knew the story behind each scuff on the hardwood and the dent in the doorframe from when Ethan crashed his tricycle. No filter could erase that. 3 buyers showed interest by the weekend. One backed out immediately after Caleb explained the life occupancy clause I requested. The second was a hedge fund type from New York who wanted to turn the house into a short-term rental. Then came Graham Whitaker. He didn't send an agent, he came himself. We met on a breezy Saturday morning. Caleb picked me up early and drove me straight to the house, my house. The smell of fresh-cut grass hit me like a punch in the chest. It was the smell of summer of weekends with Jonathan of barbecue and garden shears. Graham was already waiting, tall, lean, dressed in a simple blue button-down with the sleeves rolled up. He looked like the kind of man who did things with his hands, even if he didn't have to anymore. He shook mine firmly. "Mrs. Ellison, it's a real pleasure. Please," I said, "call me Margot. This is still my home, at least for now." He smiled. "I hope it'll feel like home again. For both of us." He didn't rush through the tour like the others had. He asked questions, real questions, about the structure, the neighborhood, the view of the bay at sunset, about the history of the home, when it was built, how long I'd lived there, what I remembered most. I told him about Jonathan, about the way he used to read the newspaper out loud from that window seat in the morning, about the storm of '89 when water crept into the mudroom, but we refused to evacuate, about the laughter, the quiet, the life lived in every corner. When we reached the backyard, he looked out over the water and said, "I've spent 30 years building hotels in the Midwest. Concrete, beige, no soul. I sold the whole chain last year. I want to live somewhere that reminds me I'm alive." Then he turned to me serious. "Caleb tells me you want to stay." "Yes," I said. "Not in the main house, just a guest cottage. Simple, quiet. I don't need much, just enough to watch the bay and feel like I still exist." He didn't flinch. "Then that's part of the deal." I stared at him. "Just like that." He nodded. "People forget that homes aren't made of walls. They're made of people. If you go, the house loses something." That night, Caleb called with the offer 15% over market value, with Margot Ellison granted full life tenancy in a custom-built guest house at the rear of the property. All personal belongings to be retained or transferred at her discretion. I told him yes before he could finish reading. The next morning, Caleb sent a formal notice to Ethan and Tessa. It was the first time I ever saw them speechless. Ethan stood in the kitchen holding the envelope like it was radioactive. "You listed the house?" he asked, blinking. "I sold it," I replied. "To who? A man with integrity." Tessa's jaw clenched. "You can't do this. I just did." She scoffed. "We live here. My parents will have to find somewhere else. You're making a huge mistake." I stared her dead in the eye. "No, Tessa. The mistake was thinking I wouldn't fight back. The invitation never came. Not that I expected one." Tessa had been planning her father's 75th birthday for weeks. Caterers, live music, a rented white tent out on my lawn. They were calling it a family celebration, a celebration in the home they tried to erase me from. 2 days before the party, Caleb called me with the final confirmation the sale had closed. The deed was transferred. Graham Whitaker now legally owned the property. And I, Margot Ellison, was no longer some inconvenient woman occupying a spare room. I was his tenant, his neighbor, and legally protected. Graham and I agreed on one thing: if this was going to end, it needed to end on my terms. He made the call himself. "Hello," I heard Ethan answer on speaker. "This is Ethan Ellison." "Hi, Mr. Ellison. My name is Graham Whitaker. I'm a potential buyer interested in the Clearwater Bay property. I know this is last minute, but I'll be flying out Saturday. Is there any chance I could view the house around 2 p.m.? There was a pause. We're hosting a party that day. I understand I'd only need half an hour. I'm prepared to make a very competitive offer. Money still moved Ethan. Some things never changed. All right, he said, but keep it brief. My wife's parents are in town and we'll be busy. Saturday came fast, too fast. I wore my best pantsuit, gray wool with pearl buttons. I hadn't worn it since Jonathan's memorial service, but it felt right, like armor. Graham showed up in a crisp navy blazer, no tie, and that same calm presence that had convinced me to trust him. We pulled up at 159. The driveway was full. Catering vans, guests in pastel blouses and linen shirts, kids running around the yard I used to rake leaves in, and in the middle of it all, my son and his wife, smiling like they owned the world, until they saw me. Ethan opened the door mid-sentence with a cousin. He froze. His eyes went from Graham to me, then back again. Mom, what are you doing here? I stepped forward calmly. I came to see my house, or rather, our house. Allow me, Graham said, offering his hand. Graham Whitaker, the new owner. The silence hit like a piano dropped from a rooftop. Tessa appeared behind Ethan holding a champagne flute. She saw me and immediately set it down. What is this, a courtesy visit? I said. I thought it best to deliver the news in person. What news? She snapped. That you have 30 days to vacate. The room behind them had gone still. People started to quiet down. Marjorie and Franklin Tessa's parents appeared in the hallway confused. I saw the flicker of realization hit their faces. Then panic. You sold the house, Ethan said, voice shaking. Yes, I replied, because it was mine to sell. You're in a care facility. I'm a competent adult with a signed declaration from my doctor and a lawyer who knows the law better than your bluff. We were going to bring you home, he muttered. I tilted my head. Into the guest room. Or were you planning to build a shed out back? Marjorie clutched Franklin's arm. Where are we supposed to go? Anywhere but here. You can't be serious, Tessa hissed. Graham calmly reached into his briefcase and handed Ethan a packet. Purchase contract, transfer documents, notice to vacate, all filed and verified. You'll regret this, Ethan snapped. I didn't flinch. I regret raising a son who forgot what loyalty looks like. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then the doorbell rang again, another guest. Tessa was frozen. Marjorie looked like she was about to faint. Ethan just stood there, lost, smaller than I'd ever seen him. I won't ruin your party, I said, stepping back. But I needed you to hear it from me. The woman you pushed aside is no longer afraid of confrontation. Graham turned toward me and offered his arm. Shall we? I nodded. Let's go. I have a new home to build. It's been 4 months since I left that house for good. Or at least the main house. Graham's crew worked fast. The guest house now sits where the old gardening shed used to be small, but airy, all-natural light and warm cedar. There's a porch that faces the bay, and every evening I sit out there with a cup of mint tea and watch the sun melt into the water. It's the kind of peace I didn't know I was missing, the kind I thought I had to earn by staying quiet, staying useful. But peace doesn't come from being convenient. It comes from claiming your space in the world and refusing to apologize for it. Graham visits every Sunday with lemon cake and home-roasted coffee. Sometimes we talk about his plans for the main house. He's restoring the original fireplace and thinking of turning the upstairs into a writing loft. Sometimes we don't talk at all, just sit in silence and let the breeze fill in the spaces between us. There's no romance, at least not yet. But there's something honest in how he treats me, not as an old woman, or a charity case, or a burden, but as a human being with history, opinions, and unfinished chapters. I hadn't realized how starved I'd been for that. Chloe came by last week. She brought a framed copy of that torn wedding photo, the one she rescued from the trash. She had it cleaned up and reprinted. When she handed it to me, I almost cried, but I didn't. Instead, I hugged her and whispered, "You're a good kid." She shrugged. I just did what Dad would have done. There it was, the twist I hadn't seen coming, that somewhere, despite everything, the goodness I'd tried to raise hadn't died. It had just skipped a generation. She still lives with them for now. But I can tell the illusion is cracking. Chloe sees them for who they are, And more importantly, she sees herself for who she can be: strong, kind, unafraid to speak up. I'm not bitter about what happened. Not anymore. Ethan and Tessa moved to Oregon from what I hear. No forwarding address, no calls, but that silence is a gift. It means no more guilt tripping, no more manipulation disguised as help, no more pretending that proximity equals love, because it doesn't. Love isn't about staying, it's about seeing someone and choosing to honor who they are, even when it's inconvenient. That's what Jonathan gave me all those years. And now, in a strange and unexpected way, that's what Graham and this new life have returned to me. My story didn't end in that house. It started again on this porch in this light with a woman who finally remembered her own worth. And if you're listening to this and you've ever been made to feel small in your own life, let me tell you what no one else will. You have the right to take up space, to speak up, to push back, to build again. Because sometimes the quietest people carry the loudest truth. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to stand up to family to protect your dignity? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story touched something in you, hit the like button, share it with someone who needs courage, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for listening. See you in the next story.